Sorry. We'll get it figured out. Our anthology releases December.
Am I supposed to be on that?
You know what? I'll tell you in a minute.
It's gonna be in November.
No, it's December. We moved it, and I will let you know, but I can't look on my phone right now because my phone's busy. But I'll jump back up and tell you before when I introduce Kristin.
Oh, it's the. Yeah, you're right.
It's a Thursday in
The first Thursday, maybe.
in December. I'll get it. I'll send an announcement out and I'll put it on the webpage. But it's going to be at Roundabout Books, and if we have books sooner than that, we'll let all of you who are in the book know where to get them. Okay. So left side of the page we have beautiful Kristin Dorsey. She's going to talk to us tonight. Oh, look at all the beautiful people over here. We have beautiful Irene Cooper is going to be our November meeting. And then she is also going to do a workshop. There are spaces left in that workshop. I would sign up for this, not just because she's my wife, but no matter what you write, Irene has a really good way of talking about how to use poetic devices in your prose. And that's a really important thing if you want your writing to be pretty, you do. So I'll take it from me. And then in December, we're going to have our holiday potluck. Notice that that is on a Monday, not a Tuesday. This room got booked for the Tuesday, so we are going to do it on a Monday. I will keep reminding people of that. On the right side, we have all the stuff that we know of that's going on in town. We have author readings, we have writing workshops, we have well, you're going to talk a little bit about your. Will you talk about your generative writing workshops?
It's not happening.
It's not happening. Cancel that. Just delete that. Okay, there are open mics. There are Raging Writers spoken words. There's 2 third Thursday spoken word nights. There's a poetry night at Lone Pine Coffee. There are all kinds of things in town to get out and either listen to work or share work. I encourage you to do that. There are some good things from the library. Good job, Becca. Becca's got some good right here stuff, and maybe you want to come up and talk a little bit about it after, yeah. No, I mean right now. Just let's see. My wife is currently just in Portland right now doing her book release on her new poetry work, and she's got 2 readings at the end of the month. Shameless plug at Cafe de Chutes and at Roundabout. Then we've got some stuff for November. There's stuff happening at COCC, both our presentation and our workshop. Other stuff. And so as things come in, I'll put those in there as well. Yeah, so come on up and tell us about, yeah, I was just noticing that these next couple of months, whatever.
Says you get no sleep. It's just got this kind of probation, you're back. You were.
Okay,
Yeah,
go for it.
But from the library, I'm in charge of our Write Here program. So we have 3 branches, and that's writers writing, writers working. And so this would be an example of a writers working style event, and writers reading. So sometimes we'll have authors that will set up to do readings of their novels, if anybody's ever interested. We just had a fun one last week about macabre poetry, which was very, very fun. Did anybody have a chance to go with that from here? Next week, we have a local author from Redmond who's doing a workshop on writer collaboration. And so the whole idea is how to collaborate with other writers. Then we have a gal coming in from Eugene, and she actually is a author, a romance novelist, and a lot of her novels take place in Deschutes County. They're fiction, Harlequin romances. And she's coming to talk about, it's called The Journey of a Romance Writer, and it's kind of her path from being a teacher and a mom to being a published author. In November, we have Karina Castlebaum coming and doing a cycling through the seasons. So it's going to be kind of a poetry and prose style workshop. That's here in downtown. All of these have been in downtown Bend. Redmond, we have our open mic night. And then, yeah, some of these same events are doubling up in Sisters if anyone's in the Redmond Sisters area and you have a shorter drive. But that's happening this month and next month.
Yeah. Okay, so December 5th, Thursday, December 5th is the release. It's, on your birthday. It's a birthday present. So I know some people have some things that they want to talk about. So Linda, would you like to start? Yes. Okay.
I'm gonna say there, I had a book launch at the Redmond bookstore last Wednesday that was really fun, really well attended. I want to thank some of the cast members, Denise and Trish, who are here tonight, but they came all the way to Redmond for the book launch, and my writing buddies, Amanda, Mary, and Dan, who's not here, amongst others in the audience. It was really fun to see that support. So I've got a couple of colors for the book, if you want to just look at it back there. And my writing friend Mary is sharing the table with me because she's also written. Mary. I've already talked about my book in past meetings, but I brought 5 copies. If anybody would like to buy one, that would be exciting. And I'm talking $8. Oh, and I want to just add, so I've been trying to get my book out at a couple of local bookstores. And Dudley's, I gave a shout out to them on my Facebook page because they were so friendly and so nice. They just ordered 2 books, put them on the shelf. I didn't have to pay anything. I didn't have to tell them any paperwork. It was just as nice as can be. So if you're downtown, you can stop by Dudley's, look in their local author section, buy a book, buy a cup of coffee. I just wanted to give a shout out to them because it was so nice and refreshing to deal with them. And
Yeah. Kayla.
Hi, this is the first meeting. I met Mike a while ago at a Shut Up and Write event, and he graciously said I could come and announce a new group that's starting in Central Oregon. So it's collectively Central Oregon. It's called Scrementing Maternum, but it's the keyword is maternal. So it's meant for anybody who considers himself a caregiver of children of any age. I have 2 kiddos, one of whom has a genetic disorder, so I write a lot of personal essays and hybrid memoir about parenting my super cute little spunky guy. But I've found just connecting with other people who are in the trenches of caregiving has been really, really fruitful for me. So Scrementing Maternum is a national organization, and they just started regional chapters. So I'm spearheading the Central Oregon chapter. So that's all of Central Oregon. And we kicked it off a couple of weeks ago. And really the goal is to get the word out, try and get as much as we can, and have a couple of kickoff meetings at times and places when parents are likely to be able to come. So if you are a parent or you consider yourself maternal in any way, it's inclusive of all different types of families. It's not specific to gender. Please contact me. There's some QR codes on a flyer on the table, and you can either contact me, you can contact the Substack for Central Oregon Scrementing Maternum, and if you know anyone who is interested in being part of that community, please reach out. It's just me at this moment, but I'm really excited to meet with other writers who kind of get how hard it is to be a writer. So be a caregiver.
All right. Thank you. Writing groups are fantastic. Writing groups are inspirational. They make you help you think outside of your little narrow world, and they are offer accountability. I was just noticing on Kristin's name tag where it says name and then it says I write, and she wrote rarely. Right? And I could wear that same name tag, and it's been honestly lately my writing group has been busy, and so we just kind of keep kicking it down the road, and I'm like, well, I don't have to write anything. Right? Although one of our members, Rebecca Keith, who I don't know if you remember Rebecca. Rebecca's has been a member of COWG for a while. Is currently at an MFA program at Manhattanville College in, well, you know where, Manhattan. And she is an editor on their literary journal, Inkwell, and they are looking for submissions. And Rebecca's like, we need to get some West Coast folks represented here. So Inkwell, look it up if you Google it, Inkwell Literary Magazine, and you've got something you want to submit. They go through submittable, and you could add a little blurb in there that says, you know, Rebecca, your editor mentioned that she was looking for some Central Oregon input. So always good to have somebody who's going to look at your work and go, I know them. Okay.
This is an announcement about writing.
Okay.
Still say it?
Yeah.
This weekend is the Sisters Harvest Fair. I will have a booth up there with my annual greeting card. And it runs Saturday from 10 to 5:30 and Sunday 10 to 3. And there's 160 vendors. So it should be really nice to have it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
One more announcement. David Severus is performing at the Tower, I think, over 20th and 21st, and 27th. And if you haven't seen him, he's delightful. What is he? David Severus, he's an author, and he writes, humor and satire, and so he reads different stories, and he engages with the audience.
Yeah, he writes humorous essays, nonfiction, and he is a fantastic performer. I mean, just really good at talking to people. He performs his own work really well, but he also is it's like going to a stand-up comedy show with literature. It's fantastic. COCC hires writing tutors. If anyone is interested in being a writing tutor, they have openings for tutors. So you basically you go through go through a training, and then they'll set you up with a schedule, and it's completely flexible. They're mostly looking for northern campus people, Madras, Redmond, Prineville. But I think they're also would be happy to have some people on tap here. If you're interested in doing that, I have done it. Kristin's done it. Jennifer's done it. Jennifer ran the tutoring department actually at COCC. So if you have questions, chat with us afterwards. I'll connect you with the person that's looking for people, and you can talk with them and see if it's something that you're interested in doing. That's all the stuff I have. Any other announcements?
Question, did we ever fix the technical difficulties for the people online?
Thumbs up from Becca.
Okay.
I do have one announcement. I don't want to jinx myself. I may have told you earlier, I published a short story in Baltimore Review, and it's online. So they do online versions of winter, spring, summer, fall. And then in the summer, late summer, they publish the collection of all the works that they published. So they just sent me a book, and I have a short story in a book in Baltimore Review. And I think you could buy the book if you want, or you can go online and you can read the stories. There's a lot of good stuff in there. I read some of the other stuff. Baltimore Review has some good stuff. I also am on a short list. My novel is on a short list for a contest with a press right now. I'm kind of excited about that, but we'll see how that goes. I'll keep you posted. Okay. Mary Krakow is our featured reader coordinator, and she is going to introduce our featured reader this evening. Yay, Mary.
Thank you. But before I do introduce our featured reader, I'm starting the sign up for the holiday potluck reading. And For those of you that haven't been here before, our December meeting, the program is you reading. And I have a sign up and you get to read for 5 minutes. So I'm just gonna pass this around. You put your name, your contact, so your email, and if you're gonna read fiction, nonfiction, or poetry. We'll send around with a pen. You don't have to sign up, but it's, makes for a good program when people are reading. Okay. Can you hear me okay in the back? All right. So now for our featured reader. With a background in education, Jennifer Elliott has experience teaching kindergarten through high school students, presenting and training teachers, and writing curricula. Her first book, Holding Grief, a love letter from a recovering death denier, was self-published in April. When not writing or teaching, Jennifer loves to travel. Excuse me, loves to travel, volunteer for hospice, search for treasures in antique stores, and watch baseball. Jennifer lives in Bend with her husband. They have 2 children, 2 cats, and 1 very spoiled golden retriever. Please welcome Jennifer Elliott.
So here's this book that I self-published in April, and it's sort of a long story of why I'm just here now reading it to you, or reading a piece of it from you, which has a lot to do with caregiving, actually. It was published in April. I was down in April at my mom's in California, and we had an authors event. And my intention was to come back home and do this big blitz of publicity, and then she's 88 years old and she fell and broke her left arm. So when you're speaking of caregiving, I really appreciate what in any event. So I am just now getting my feet back under me, and it's interesting being a writer, and it feels sort of like a locomotive, like getting the inertia to start again. I was with Christopher on the 21st. That workshop was a great, wonderful, just got me started. It started writing again. So here I am. So here it is, Holding Grief, a love letter from a recovering death denier. I'm just going to read a couple pages from the introduction, not the whole thing. It's too long for that. So, okay. Jerry is getting close, said the hospice nurse, listening to his fading heartbeat with a stethoscope. My mom and I were sitting on the couch nearby and immediately jumped to our feet, moving to stand one on each side of him. His breath slowed. There were long pauses between each one, and then there were no more. This was the first time I had ever been with someone when they died. In the months and years that followed, I experienced what I now refer to as a shift. I started changing. Perhaps it was a midlife crisis. Since I was middle-aged, it made sense that it would be. And in the 5 years leading up to Jerry's death, there had been 4 deaths in close succession in our family. I was thinking a lot about death and grief. Being in the presence of my mom's partner, as he took his last breath, put it in the forefront. I always look back at this moment as the point of origin of this shift. I set out on a quest to understand what I was feeling and how it was affecting my well-being. I began to explore. Whether we know it or not, we have a relationship with not only people in our lives, but also with circumstances. We are taught how to respond to these circumstances by our families, our peer groups, and our culture. They are taught or learned explicitly, implicitly, or sometimes surreptitiously. An association is now formed with these circumstances. We have a relationship with food. We have a relationship with our bodies. We have a relationship with money. We have a relationship with time. We also have relationships with change, sex, adversity, illness, even the weather. And finally, we have a relationship with death. We have a relationship with both our own death and the way the deaths of others affect us, in particular through grief. The acquaintance I had with death and grief, it was estranged. I saw this relationship as being like an affiliation with a second cousin whom I only very rarely saw at weddings or reunions. She would perhaps live far away in a state I have never visited. The state would have tornadoes, and when I heard about a tornado touching down there, I thought about that second cousin in a fleeting sort of way. It seemed I had lived nearly half a century or so preoccupied with my own busyness, that I somehow had this idea that death had not really touched me. Or had it, and it just was that I hadn't given it the attention it demanded. I'm going to jump ahead. So the following remembrances are explorations into my experiences with grief associated with death. Not all of them, but most of them. As I started writing, I was startled by what I remembered and what I didn't remember. I started noticing threads of what had helped and facilitated the healing and what hadn't. I'm not an authority on the subject of death or grief. I have no degrees in psychotherapy or grief counseling, but I am experienced in the subject. If you reflect on your own story of your life, you too are probably more experienced with death and grief than you may have thought, and make no promises to fix the pain you are feeling, but perhaps I can suggest ways in which to make the experience a better one. So there's then essays. There's about 13 standalone essays that are in a linear order that I write. And then the end has just some little takeaways of things that have worked. So thank you for listening.
Thank you for that. That was lovely. And where do we get a hold of that?
So they're Dudley's, Roundabout, Big Story, Amazon.
Okay, and tell us the title again so we can.
It's called Holding Grief, a Love Letter.
Okay.
I recommend that.
All right. Beautiful. Nice job. Thank you very much. All right. Kristin, Dorsey. Ladies and gentlemen, I've known Kristin for a while now. We met, where we met.
I was just gonna say, I don't know where we met.
It's been 8 or 9 years.
A long time. No, I don't think so.
I don't think we did. I think we met at a writing thing.
Alright.
Yeah. So I think we met at a writing thing, and Kristin's been teaching writing for
22 years.
22 years now.
Thank you.
And at COCC for
It's my 10th year.
10 years there, right? She's a professor in humanities at Central Oregon Community College, teaches academic and creative writing, broad spectrum of literature courses, and even a little film. Children's Lit was your PhD
Yeah.
or
I was in a program.
master's? You were in a program. She was in a program.
It's my specialty.
Sometimes when she's really lucky, she gets to teach workshops in the community, and she's the mom of, they're 5 now, or
They're just about 6.
just about 6 twins, who she suspects will eclipse her creativity by the close of the decade. What does that mean?
Oh, no. It's already happened.
Okay. So Kristin's going to talk to us about being a healthy writer. So everyone, welcome Kristin. Kristin was Kristin was the vice president of Central Oregon Writers Guild for quite a while too. So
And then twins.
Right.
And that pretty much did that. This is a terrible. Oh, that's so much better. Yes, for those of you who are around then, twins are almost 6. They'll be 6 next month, which is pretty crazy, right? We're all old. You get to, I'll fold you in with that. So I thank you for having me tonight. I love coming to the Writers Guild because I don't get here much unless I'm speaking. So it's always fun to see old friends and to do some reconnecting. So I'm really happy to be here. It's really fun. It's really fun when somebody that you love as much as I love Mike introduces you. That's terrific. I love that. That feels great. And so I'm just really happy to be here and be with you tonight. So when Mike asked me to come, I did the thing that I do a lot, which is I'm like, well, instead of saying like, oh, I want to talk about X, right? I'm like, well, what has nobody else talked about? What do we need to talk about, right? And this is kind of my MO. I like to do something that feels a little bit different. So the talk tonight is about health and writing, two different aspects of it. On the one hand, the ways in which writing is actually very healthy for us, and then some of the literature and some of the research that's been done on that, because I think that part is pretty interesting, and sometimes it's stuff that people aren't aware of, don't know much about. So I'm gonna share a little bit of that tonight. And then on the other side, writers are also notoriously unhealthy, ironically, right? And so talking a little bit about thinking about the relationship between health and writing and how to be a sort of healthy writer. And we're going to talk about this both in terms of physical health and also talk about mental health a little bit today as well. So tonight as well. So that's where we're going. Oh no.
What if you tell it to be a slideshow?
Yes. Okay, well, I'll finish saying what I was going to say about the beginning of it. So fast forward many months, and I'm working on the presentation, and I started thinking to myself, is this too basic? Is this too obvious? So I'm just going to say up front that a lot of what I'm going to say tonight is not really earth-shattering, but there is, I think, a real benefit, and I'll tell you kind of what I would like everybody to get out of it. If you get one or two new thoughts or new ideas, that's good. I'm happy with one or two. That makes me happy. And then also, I think that there is something to be said for kind of pulling together a lot of stuff that we already know and kind of talking about it in one big bundle. So this is just your like little reminder that you know these things, you know most all of this stuff, but let's talk about it kind of as a full topic and remind ourselves of the things that we should be doing to take care of ourselves as we're sort of like pursuing our writing. So that's kind of the hope for tonight. So we're going to do a little bit of exploring health benefits of writing, considering some health challenges for writers specifically. I want us to rethink our own writing habits. So there is a reflective part of tonight, and hopefully people have pen and paper, because we are going to stop and do a couple writing breaks at various times, short ones. And then, so we're going to write about our bodies and minds, and we're going to develop a plan for healthy writing practices by the end. That's a lot. We're going to, okay. So we're going to start by talking about writing as a healthy practice. So we're going to start with the good news. So what I'd like to do is have everybody take a quick inventory. And when I say quick inventory, I mean quick. So I'm only going to go about 30 seconds per item here, okay? I just want you to jot down a couple of ideas. So this is just to kind of get us centered a little bit. So don't think too much. So first, take stock. How do you feel in your body right now? Is anything hurting? How's your energy level tonight? I don't know about you, but like change the season, the ash, the darkness, I'm a little low energy, to be honest. So how's your energy level? Do you need to stretch? Do you need to stretch or reposition yourself? Are you breathing deeply and regularly? So just take a minute, note, write it down, get a baseline. Okay, 30 seconds goes fast, people. So next one is, second, how's your mental state? Are you aware of any generalized emotion? Are you feeling particularly happy or particularly sad or particularly angry or? Boy, I just went with the most basic emotions there, didn't I? That wasn't very right. But generalized emotion, which ones, or which one? Do you feel any acute emotion? Is there anything that's like almost poking you on the inside? What is preoccupying you right now? What's distracting you? How present do you feel in the moment? What would make you feel more centered? So again, just 30 seconds, check in with yourself in your mental state, emotional state. Third, I want you to check in with your writing self. What are you currently working on or not working on, as the case may be? A lot of us have things that we just think about how we should be working on. How's it going? What feels good and what feels productive right now? What feels less good or productive or provokes anxiety or creates self-doubt? So just check in with that writer self for a minute. Okay, I'm going to show you the last one, and you're going to say, Kristin, that is not a 30-second prompt, but I want you to react quickly to it. Okay, it's something you could spend a lot of time thinking about, but react quickly. Last one is clarify your intentions. What do you want to accomplish tonight, this week, this month, this year? So really quick. First thing you think of tonight, this week, this month, this year. And then after you do that, I want you to consider, are these realistic and pragmatic intentions? I want you to evaluate quickly your intentions in light of all the other things you have going on in your life currently. So put those writerly intentions in context of your life. Okay, do we have a baseline? Everybody kind of checked in with themselves. You have a little bit of an idea of where you are right now. Everybody centered. Very good. Also, before I go on, I'm going to start getting into some research right now. As I'm talking, if you have questions or if you have something to add, please just interrupt me. This can totally be interactive. I don't mind. I do this every day, so I'm comfortable with that. You're not going to throw me off. You can try, but you're not going to throw me off. So please, especially if you're somebody who kind of needs to say it when you think it, then please do. I'm more than happy to entertain conversation. All right, so let's talk about some physical benefits of writing. And this stuff is all sort of based in research, and I'm going to show you some of that research in a minute, but these are the things when people talk about the physical benefits, the physical health benefits of writing, these are some of the things that they talk about. So first of all, people who have a regular writing practice sleep better than people who do not. And there's evidence to show that it doesn't really matter exactly what your writing process is, that almost any writing practice is going to lead to better sleep. Writing right before bed, especially, is extremely good for sleep. So just a dump of 5 minutes worth of thoughts is actually something that works very well. It sort of calms the mind, it gets things out from the mind and onto the page, and it leads to people falling asleep more quickly. So it's something, it does something to think about. Yeah.
can that be like a gratitude journal? Because I do that at night.
Absolutely.
I write
Yeah.
the, things that I remember that were special during the day or that were.
Yeah, interestingly, one of the things that's super fascinating when you start to look at this research is that you would think that maybe certain kinds of writing can be more beneficial than other kinds of writing. And in reality, most writing kind of has the same effect. It seems to be something about the process itself that's beneficial. But yeah, gratitude journaling is great. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So that's definitely something that can be a really easy thing at night to just sort of, and it's nice too because it centers you in sort of a positive place, which is awesome. Although some of us before we go to bed, the thing that we need to get out is not positive, right? Like sometimes you're angry or you're frustrated or whatever, and sometimes that's what you have the capacity for. And sometimes getting that outside is actually really good because once it's out, you can go, okay, now I can sleep. Now I feel good, right? So studies show, very good for sleep. It's really good for stress reduction. And we're not just talking about like people's perceptions of their stress. They actually have done studies that show that there is a statistically significant change in cholesterol levels, cortisol levels. The cortisol levels studies are fascinating. A regular writing practice actually impacts cortisol really significantly, and that's the stress hormone. So those studies are especially interesting. It lowers blood pressure in a statistically significant way, in the same way that exercise does, and it improves liver function. And this is across the board. This has been replicated in study after study after study. So it's great news because there are very few things that you can do, especially very few things that you can do if you hate exercise, that will impact your body in this way. But writing does. And it's also interesting, maybe for some of you, that these results are very similar to the results that they get when they look at the effects of MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction. So meditation practices have very similar kinds of results. So writing seems to have the same sort of overall impact on the body that meditation does, if meditation is done. It increases immunity. And again, this in a statistically significant way. And it accelerates healing. Things like they've shown in studies that wounds heal faster when somebody has a writing practice than when they don't. Crazy, right? Very exciting. The other thing that you'll see a lot if you look at a lot of the research here is that people who write on a regular basis go to the doctor less often. And that includes people with chronic conditions. People with chronic conditions, when compared to other people with the same chronic conditions, if they have a writing practice, actually go to the doctor less often than people who do not. Also, and this is also very exciting, and this is one of the reasons why I think a lot of big employers should think about making their employees write. People lose fewer days of work and fewer days of school if they have a regular writing practice. Right? Really interesting. They report feeling overall in better health than people who do not.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I know we keep hearing about a mental health crisis with our young people. If you force someone to write, does that improve their health things?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'm going to talk in a minute about sort of like what we know about the way that writing impacts trauma, or sort of like trying to get over certain kinds of traumas, and that research is sketchy. But what we do know is that when people are in a negative headspace, so for example, if you force people to write, right, and you get them to write past the point of resistance, then number one, they will ultimately kind of turn that around and they will end up writing about things in a more positive way. So they start off with negative writing, but if they get past that point of resistance, they start writing in a more positive way. And number two, that they have the same benefits has the same benefits for those people than it does for anybody else, somebody who just does it on their own. So the research would suggest that it's good for everybody. The other thing that's interesting about young people is that it doesn't, the writing does not have to be with pencil and paper. It doesn't even have to be in a journal or something like that. Yeah. So if somebody has a blog or if somebody does certain kinds of social media stuff, will work the same way. So it's really, really interesting. Again, like that stuff doesn't seem to really impact the results all that much. So if you can force them to and get them to do it to the point of coming around to it, right, then it has the same benefits. It's interesting. Okay, so this research has been done with people, for people with a lot of different conditions. So I'm just going to give you a few of the conditions that have been studied specifically. So things like all kinds of cancers, heart-related conditions, high blood pressure, MS, rheumatoid arthritis, HIV, asthma. I talked about the physical wounds, IBS, Parkinson's, lupus. All of these conditions have been studied in relationship to what they call expressive writing. And in all of these conditions, there appears to be a significant benefit to expressive writing for those particular chronic diseases or chronic illnesses, which is pretty amazing. I sort of wanted to go through the list because I think it's important to note that it kind of doesn't seem to matter what the condition is, right? That the condition is secondary to the overall health benefit that writing has. I'm going to talk more about what expressive writing means in a minute. Yeah.
So, is there, I know you mentioned that the process doesn't matter, but is there an amount of time that matters? I'm
going to talk about that in just a minute because that actually is sort of an important question. Yeah. So pause. We'll get there. All right. So these are just I'm not giving you a bibliography so that you can run off and try and find these articles or anything like that. And this is a very small representation of the articles that are out there, but I wanted you to look at just some of the titles of some of the articles and some of the research that's been done, because it shows that wide range of research that's been done on this topic. So you'll see that the first one is on lung function and asthma. The second one is on this thing called the 2-minute miracle, which is a 2-minute writing process, and it boosts overall health, elevated blood pressure, and this last one is different health outcomes in cancer patients. So again, I just want to kind of point out that there's like this wide range of research that's been done on this. And I just think it's fun to kind of look at that. Okay, mental and emotional benefits of writing. So this is also a place where there's really good evidence that this is good for your overall mental and emotional well-being. So things like they've shown improvement in memory, both short-term and long-term memory for people who have a regular writing practice. A decrease in symptoms of anxiety and depression, and let's put kind of like an asterisk next to PTSD. I'll talk more about that in a second. Greater overall resilience. So people talk about the fact that they get over disappointment or frustrations more easily if they have a writing practice. And for those of us who write, especially for those of you who've been journalers, this probably makes a lot of sense to you, because a lot of us have had that experience of kind of working through something through writing, that there's something about that process that sort of helps with, again, getting that on a page, getting it out of your head and being able to work through it at a slightly faster pace. And that sort of equals resilience, right? Overall, improved problem solving capabilities, better overall mood. People who write expressively are just happier. Again, this kind of goes against conventional wisdom or the mythology around the writer. We'll talk more about that in a second. And also enhanced work and school performance. Let me just give you one example. I use this with my students all the time because I think it's really interesting. When they look at the effect of writing on test scores, be that, first of all, tests in any subject and tests in any format, but something that is considered to be a testing situation. Writing that's done within, I think it's like 12 to 18 hours of the test, any writing of 5 minutes or more. So this could be things like, just could be a gratitude journal. It could be just like complaining about your parents. It could be anything, right? If you write for 5 minutes at some point between, sort of in that 18-hour window before the test, doesn't have anything to do with the material that you're being tested on, your test scores will be higher than if you did not do that 5 minutes of writing. And again, this has been replicated over and over again. super, super interesting, right? So again, this is what they mean when they talk about sort of enhanced work in school performance, that these are the kinds of things that they've been able to show in studies that happen when you just take a little tiny bit of time to write. And again, doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter how you do it. I will talk just for a second, because this is the one area where there's some gray is where people, and there's been a lot of research about how expressive writing can be used with people who have different kinds of trauma and who have PTSD or complex PTSD because of that trauma. And the results of those studies, not clear. So it seems to depend a lot on the nature of the trauma. It seems to depend a lot on how much time has elapsed since the trauma. It seems to depend a lot on what kind of writing. So in this particular case, in the case of trauma, the kind of writing that someone does seems to be a little bit more specific in order to help. So for example, people who have sexual trauma, for example, are less likely to benefit from a general writing practice. They are also less likely to benefit from being asked to write specifically about the trauma that they had in a straightforward kind of way. There are other methods of writing that work better with people who have sexual trauma. Childhood trauma, very, very complicated. The research is not there to support that this does much for people who have childhood trauma. Veterans, very mixed results. And so it seems to have a lot to do with the context in which that writing is happening. It's really interesting. And that's an area that people are still working very hard in to try to figure out, is it really about the fact that this doesn't help, or is it really about the fact that we haven't figured out how to use it correctly? So in all of these other ways, the kind of writing, the way that you write, all of those things doesn't matter. In the case of trauma, it does seem to matter, but we're not really sure how. So keep your eyes open for that, because that's something that people are, researchers are working on. And so you can kind of see that this is some of the research on the emotional and mental benefits. So things like, the first one's on anxiety. And I'll talk about this in a second, but the second one, James Pennebaker, is kind of the grandfather of these studies, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. Positive writing for mood disorders, general health benefits of writing about life goals, and writing for treatment of depression. So again, kind of like wide range here of different kinds of research that's been done. Okay. So interestingly, most of the research that's been done takes the form of the original research that was done on expressive writing, which was done by James Pennebaker, who was at University of Texas, Austin. And he was the one who first started to suspect that there was a relationship between what he calls expressive writing and certain kinds of health benefits, both mental health benefits and physical health benefits. So specifically, expressive writing is when you're writing about thoughts and feelings, and in some way reflecting on those thoughts and feelings. And there are a few things that are kind of necessary when you're doing this kind of writing to get the most out of it. So for example, one of the things is that narration is more beneficial than, for example, lyricism. I apologize to you both, but narration is good. And this also kind of makes an intuitive sense, right? Because when we narrate our own stories, we are exerting control over those stories. We're able to shape those stories. Another really interesting piece of research has to do with dreams and nightmares. And I don't know how many of you have been told this, or if anybody's had this therapeutic experience, that if you're somebody who consistently has nightmares, and especially if you have recurring nightmares, one of the treatments for that is that they ask you to wake up from the nightmare and to write out an alternate ending to the nightmare. Oh, I like that. Right? It's really, it's actually incredibly effective. And again, the reason it appears to be incredibly effective is because what you're really doing is you're taking control over that narrative, right? So narration is super important. really specific detail is important. And here's where you see where people who have been traumatized may have an issue here, right? Because those specific details can be re-traumatizing. But in general, when you're doing expressive writing, the more specific you can be with details, the more that you do the show don't tell, the more that you talk about sensory details, the more beneficial it is. Being emotionally specific. So talking about emotion and naming emotion and being incredibly specific about what emotions you were feeling at a specific time, or you are feeling at a specific time, also very beneficial. Reflection. So not only telling a story or not only talking about something that's happened to you, but also then taking a step back and doing some reflection on it. What does that mean? What do you understand it to mean, right? And even if that changes over time, that recording that change over time, those changes and reflections over time, also really beneficial. And again, this was all stuff that sort of came out of Pennebaker's early work on expressive writing. So for his particular mode of study, they did have a really specific duration, right? And these studies were done, you would usually have people writing for 15 to 20 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week for a 4-month period. And what you'll find is that as you go kind of across the research, as research has over the last 30 years or so has sort of exploded on this, that almost everyone uses the same protocol in their research. So whether it's health benefits or mental health benefits, they'll use the same protocol. 15 to 20 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week for a 4-month period. Now, what's interesting is that one of the ways in which one of the things that we don't really understand at this point is how long you have to do this. So in other words, if you see benefits after that 4 months, can you stop and still get benefit? That's not clear at this point. Can you do it for only 5 to 10 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week? Can you do it for 15 to 20 minutes, 2 times a week? That stuff is still kind of up in the air. And so a lot of the studies now are moving toward playing with those parameters a little bit to see where you get that sustained benefit, or if you get that sustained benefit over time. Now, I'm a teacher, so I just tell my students, you have to do this indefinitely, right? Because right now, that's the only thing we know for sure works. Doing it indefinitely does work, right? But this is something that researchers are still very interested in. In these studies, writing is private. So in other words, the participants are promised that no one else will read what they write. And that feeling of security seems to be important to the process. So it's private, it's personalized. That is that they're not given really broad, overly general prompts, but that the writing needs to come from the person, it needs to be personalized. And that when they're writing, it's distraction free, which means not writing to music, not writing in a coffee shop where there's lots of noise, right? But actually writing kind of in quiet spaces. There's that need for the quiet. And then generally what happens is that people ultimately write toward positivity, gratitude, and meaningful reflection. Now, you don't have to start there. So you can start, and very often people in these studies do, they start with something very negative. They start with negative emotion, right? But again, once you kind of go past the point of resistance, people kind of talk themselves back out of it. So this is more anecdotal than anything else, but there's a writing exercise I love to do with undergraduates. And that is that I have them write a letter to someone who has wronged them, who they feel has wronged them. And tell us, tell that person what they did to wrong you. Tell them how you feel about it. Tell them how angry you are, tell them how frustrated you are. And I give them a good amount of time to do this. So this is not a 3-minute activity. This is like a 15-minute activity. And the thing that's really interesting about that is that if you give them enough time and you walk around the room and say, I don't see you writing right now, right? So you keep them writing the entire time. Where they come out on that is they start off with frustration, they start off with anger, and they move to understanding. They move to, well, maybe you were thinking this. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I did this first and that caused you to act this way. So in other words, if you give people enough time, they kind of come around to this idea of something that's more positive, that's more about gratitude, that's more about understanding, that's more about positive reflection, right? I'm just making sure I didn't print anything. That's good. Okay. So this is the protocol that's used for most of these studies. This is the prompt that's given. So it says, for the next 4 days, I would like you to write your very deepest thoughts and feelings. This comes straight from Pennebaker. About the most traumatic experience of your entire life or an extremely important emotional issue that has affected you in your life. In your writing, I'd like you to really let go and explore your deepest emotions and thoughts. You might tie your topic to your relationships with others, including parents, lovers, friends, or relatives, to your past, your present, or your future, or to who you have been, who you would like to be, or who you are now. You may write about the same general issues or experiences on all days of the week, or about completely different topics each day. All of your writing will be completely confidential. There's that promise, right, that it's going to be private. Don't worry about spelling, grammar, or sentence structure. Oh, right. That's the other thing, right? Like, this is not about like how good the writing is. This is not about the quality. Don't worry about spelling, grammar, or sentence structure. The only rule is that once you begin writing, you continue until the time is up. And so that, again, kind of gets people past that point of resistance. I played with the idea of us doing this tonight, and then I was like, that's a terrible idea. What are you thinking? So if anybody would like the slides, email me.
You can,
Yes.
if you share it with me, I'll post it.
Okay, yeah. So this is something that you can absolutely do at home, if you would like to. But we will not do it as a group, because that's a terrible idea. I did for like 5 minutes, like it was really good. So this is a little tidbit, especially for writers. So this kind of expressive writing has actually been shown to minimize or remediate writer's block. So if you are in a situation where you have writer's block, which I don't really believe in, but some people do, so we're just going to pretend like it really exists. If you are experiencing writer's block, some expressive writing over a period of time should knock things a little bit loose, because it'll have the same sort of impact on that writer's block that it would have on other kinds of sort of mental blocks. Also, do you love the painting? Yeah, it's really great. Yeah, I know, right?
But when you talk about the 15 to 20 minute block, is that the kind of thing like you've heard of the brain dump where it's like you just don't stop, you don't take your pen off the paper? Do you encourage the students to do that, or can they stop and think first?
Yeah, I don't think thinking's good in general, right? I don't think thinking's good in general. When I think about writing, what's that?
Trying to get past the critic.
Yeah, part of it, I think that that's part of it. And then the other part is that specifically in terms of criticism, I think specifically the thing that I worry about is that in those periods of time where people stop to think, very often the specific thing that they start thinking about is, what if somebody read this? That actually tends to be the sort of like negative thought that comes up. So in order for them to sort of buy into the nobody will ever see this, and we're going to talk about this more in just a second, but in order for them to buy into that, this nobody will ever see this kind of thing, you have to keep them writing pretty fast, because they have to outrun that particular thought. That particular thought is the one that I worry about the most.
There's also the idea that art, creativity happens outside of thinking. So if any of you have another art form, painting or sculpting or anything like that, when you find yourself in that flow state, or even sports or something like that, you're in a non-thinking state, which is hard to do when you're using the written word, because it comes out of you think it's coming out of your brain. But when you start thinking about the writing, then it changes the art itself. If that makes sense.
So actually, there's another way that I would also talk about that I think is really interesting. And that is, if we buy into sort of like right brain, left brain thinking, right? That the idea of right brain versus left brain thinking. And I feel really self-conscious talking about this in front of Trish, so she will school me if I say anything wrong. The left brain is responsible for sequencing, logic, and language, and also parts of the whole. This is complicated, so listen to this. The right brain is art, music, visuals, and big picture. Does anybody see a problem with that for writers? It's a problem for writers. Because if we're going to be good writers, it means using our whole brain, right? Because the language comes from the left hemisphere and the creativity comes from the right hemisphere. And that is complicated, right? So I think that that's another thing that, that we somehow have to sort of recircuit things, right?
Yeah, I think that those things can happen without thinking.
Right, and I think that may be one of the ways that we sort of like get around that problem a little bit. But if we're too dialed in, that can be an issue. Now, obviously, depending on the kind of writing you're doing, thinking can be very important. But for this kind of writing, not as much. And for early drafting, not as much as you want, right? A lot of times during early drafting, the less thinking we do about it, the better. And the more of a mess we have today. to fix later, with the other half of our brain. Yeah,
We're not thinking about it, the corpus callosum, the middle thing.
The middle
that
stuff,
connects
yeah.
The hemispheres. So if we're not thinking about it, the brain just does both of them, just like learning another language. Our primary language is in English, but if we learn any other language, music, writing, whatever, it goes into several different parts of your brain. Actually, they found this out fairly recently. So if you're just doing expressive writing and you're not thinking and you're just writing, like I do that sometimes to meditate. If my brain is running around and I can't focus, you know, I can't focus on my breathing or whatever, I'll just do free flow writing, whatever comes out, not think about it. And then I read it later and I go, oh, pretty interesting. Cause I won't even necessarily, like I'll kind of know what I'm writing, but when I read it back later, I go, wow, I really got something out of that. That was really cool. And it's because our brains are really a lot more integrated. So they have those focuses in those areas, but if we do this kind of free flow, they all work together.
yeah, and it totally makes sense that's why most of us write best in a flow state. Because then you aren't kind of like bifurcated in that way. That's not particularly useful for writing. So I'm gonna actually make you stretch, but these are stretches for writers. And so you can get up or not get up because you don't have to stretch necessarily by getting up if you don't want to. So we're gonna do a couple of just really simple ones, really obvious ones. First one, we're gonna do a little shoulder roll in case you have any like of this. So just, if you want to stand, feel free. So down and back and squeeze your shoulder blades together and then up and around, and you try and make it last for about 5 seconds. And you do it about 5 times. So obviously we're thinking about places on our body that tend to get overly taxed when we're writing, neck, shoulders, back of the head, right? That whole area. Okay, another one, I want you to kind of look off into the distance and find the middle distance in your eyesight. So we're gonna do something with the eyes right now. So find a middle distance with your eyesight and focus on that middle distance. And I want you to, without moving your head, move your eyes up and move your eyes down. And move your eyes up, move your eyes down. Kind of keeping your center of focus in that middle distance, up, down. Now I want you to move your eyes around clockwise. Try and keep focused on the middle distance. Don't move your head. Now I want you to move your eyes counterclockwise. If this hurts, call your eye doctor. It's not supposed to hurt. It should help if you've been staring at a screen for too long. So, okay. Yeah, right?
It'll also be helpful if you get stopped for DUI on the way.
What did you do tonight? Well, okay, wrists, let's do this. So what I want you to do is put your arm out. If you need to, you can rest it on the back of the chair. So put your arm out. I want you to just ankle down as far as you can possibly go and hold it to the count of 5. My 5 is different from your 5. And then what I want you to do is I want you to lift it up toward the ceiling, and I want you to splay your fingers as wide as you possibly can. And hold it for 5. And then back. So this would be 5 seconds in each position, 5 times per arm for your wrists. Okay. So again, super, super easy. And this is not to, so we're done. I told you, easy stretches, easy stretches. YouTube has tons of great yoga for writers. And these are 5-minute yoga sessions which are totally based on working out wrists, necks, shoulders, hips, right? The places where writers tend to have problems. So stretches. Okay, and now let's get into some health challenges for this is the fun stuff.
Before you go on,
Yeah.
as far as
that goes, what about stand-up desks? I mean.
Yeah, stand-up desks are real, like, double-edged sword. Because they can cause circulation problems.
Standing up or the sitting down?
The standing up can also cause circulation problems. Yeah, so one of the things is you don't want to do anything for too long, right? It's in all things moderation. So I think that the big thing about standing desk is sort of the need that you have to go up and down, right? You want to change your position as much as possible. I recently invested in one of those desk chairs that are like ultra wide that you can sit cross-legged in. Have you seen these? They're really cool. It's weirdly comfortable. It would not be for everybody, but for some people it can be really comfortable. So finding those things that sort of feel good and then alternating, not thinking that you can stay in one position and stay comfortable. I think that's the thing. But yeah, there's interesting studies about sort of like lack of circulation issues that can come from standing for too long, which makes sense. So here are the challenges. You already know all this, but we'll just kind of like talk through it. It's a sedentary pursuit, right? Like we don't move enough when we're writing. We just don't. Most of us don't move enough. It causes eye strain, and this is true especially if you're writing on a computer, but it's also true if you're writing on paper, right? Invest in some nice cream paper. Please invest in cream paper. It's very good for your eyes. But eye strain. And it's especially bad because a lot of writers are also readers, which also causes eye strain, right? So watch out for that eye strain issue. Back, neck, shoulder pain, obviously, right? Most of us do not have great posture while we're working. And so that causes that kind of pain, and chronically, right? Repetitive use issues, carpal tunnel, right? That we use the same parts of our body over and over and over again. And there are issues with that as well. Circulation issues, potentially if you're sitting for too long or standing for too long, and also headaches, which probably come from one of the other things on the list in most cases, especially that neck and shoulder. So what do we do about it? Well, one thing is make sure that you're doing an evaluation of your workspace, and you're looking at things like how you're sitting in your chair, what your desk height is like, where your keyboard and your mouse are, where your monitor is, and also the brightness of your monitor, your overall lighting, and think about your eyewear. So if you are somebody like me who now has to like do this constantly all day, every day, I don't know, I hit like 48 and suddenly I couldn't see anymore. So if you are somebody who has that problem, getting a good pair of middle distance glasses is transformational, because you're not doing that anymore. You're never squinting. Everything, you can actually just see the it's like the best $100 I've ever spent in my entire life. Really, really good. But think about your eyewear. Think about how well your eyewear is. Make sure that you're taking breaks. Okay. And I don't mean like think to yourself before you sit down to write, I need to take some breaks. You need to set a timer, people, right? You need to remind yourself, and I don't care how into it you are, when that timer goes off, you take your break. So optimally, if you look at the literature, most of the literature says 30 minutes. I think 30 minutes is too long. I think you should be looking at 20 to 25 minutes. If you use the Pomodoro method, which is what I use, just because it's nice and easy, it's 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 4 times, and then a 25-minute break. But find yourself I have students who can go 10 minutes and 3 minutes. They work for 10 minutes, they take a break for 3 minutes, right? So find the right interval for you, but make sure that you're actually scheduling those breaks and you're taking them, because you will want to work through some of those breaks. Don't. It's not good for your body. It's not good for your brain. So make sure that you're scheduling breaks and taking breaks. Think about dictation. Dictation is amazing. And one of the things I really like, and I tell this to students who, especially my students who are ADHD writers, that dictating into a phone is terrific because you can move while you do it. So I have students who write while pacing, and this is very, very smart. Because you can be moving, you're keeping your body busy while you're trying to write, which actually can also rewire some of those thoughts, right? And get some of those thoughts sort of like outside of you, external. And that's a really good way. Dictation is a really good way to sort of not have some of these issues, or not have these issues be as much of a problem. Obviously, regular stretching, regular exercise. Proper hydration, don't forget to drink your water. I always have my coffee. I sometimes have my water. I should always have my water and sometimes have my. Proper nutrition, make sure that you're eating properly, right? Our brains work better when we're feeding them well. Think about massage, if you can do it. Or if you have somebody at home who will do it for you. I now have 6-year-olds who know exactly where my spot is. They will put their hands on their back and they'll go, did I find your spot? I'm like, yes, you found the spot, thank you. Massage is really good. And it's, again, it's something that is just part of sort of maintenance of our bodies, especially those of us who do a lot of writing while we're sitting. Make sure that you're getting adequate sleep. It's hard to write when you're tired. It's really hard to write when you're tired. Some of us only write when we're tired. So think about adequate sleep. Murakami, this is a great quick, if you've read any of his work, you know that he's a big runner. But I really, really love what he has to say. So he says, when I'm in writing mode for a novel, I get up at 4 a.m. and work for 5 to 6 hours. In the afternoon, I run for 10 kilometers or swim for 1,500 meters or do both. Overachiever. Then I read a bit and listen to some music. I go to bed at 9 p.m. I keep to this routine every day without variation. The repetition itself becomes the important thing. It's a form of mesmerism. I mesmerize myself to reach a deeper state of mind. Now, the reason that I show you this is not because any of you can do that. I can't do this. I've got kids. I've got a job. Like, there's no way I can live my life this way. Sometimes I go to bed at 7:15, and sometimes I go to bed at 3. Right? So this is not possible. But think about the things that you can do that put you into that state. So for a lot of people, that is running or swimming or something like that. Do those things that put you into that state, because you will think better afterwards, or you'll think better doing it, right? So putting yourself into almost a kind of self-hypnosis is really, really effective for your overall brain health and for your creativity. Okay, so again, we're gonna do a quick inventory. So again, this is just like about 30 seconds per. I want you to think about your work environment and your work habits. So first of all, how healthy is your workspace? If you sit in bed and work, the answer is not very healthy. Consider the comfort of your chair, the height of your desk, the setup of your keyboard and mouse, or your notebook and pen and pencil, and your use of ergonomic aids. And what I mean by this is, do you put your feet up? I have one of those cool cushions and I desk put my feet up at work. But what kinds of aids do you use? Do you have wrist, like wrist folds, that sort of thing? Okay. Do you regularly write with healthy drinks and snacks nearby? Or do you have them a short walk away, but ready for you? How often do you take breaks? How do you decide when to take breaks? So do you have a method for deciding when you take breaks? It should not be when you can no longer stand to sit any longer. It's not good. And what do you do on your breaks? How do you spend your breaks?
This is gonna sound, well, maybe I should just not even talk, but I drink a lot of water all day. So I don't have to time my breaks because my body does. And every time I get up and go walk and then come back, my work is better.
Yeah.
So,
What does that tell? Right. What does that tell you?
yeah.
Right,
I don't
yeah.
know how much time it is, like you're saying, how much time is it? I don't know, I haven't paid attention to.
Yes,
my
I think
time,
that
but it's my.
I think from P to P is actually time. I think that's actually like a time. I think that's fine. That's as good as 15 minutes to me, or 20 minutes. That's specific.
Yeah.
To you, right? Do you have a writing routine? In other words, do you write regularly? Do you have sort of a regular routine? Or is it hit and miss? Do you write at the same time of day? Do you write the same number of times a week, etc.? What is it and how often do you follow that routine? I'm not answering this question. Ever. For anyone. And when my students ask, I lie. What works in your writing routine and environment and what doesn't? Quick list. What is working for you right now and what is not? Yeah. Yeah.
Heard an author being interviewed once that what worked for tricks, and she said having a second monitor changed her life. And I've done that. I have a second monitor now. You can get them at the second store. You don't, I mean, and it
It really, you need a little more space on your desk, but wow, what a difference. Like you can, you have your documents that you're working on, and you can really have the sort of right. Or you're researching something on the right hand screen. Yeah, it's the point now where I without it, I'll always I get home to the screen. So you get real addicted to it. Just makes it, it's just busy.
It also is forcing you to have to sort of change position more often, right? And you can actually also, that's another way to get that same sort of effect, although it doesn't help with the actual writing process itself. But another way to get that effect is to have a desk that's near a window. It'll do the same sort of, to have a desk that's near a window, right? If you're looking at wall, like I am everywhere that I have a desk, and I have many desks, that that doesn't work. But if you're near a window, that will occasionally, stuff will happen out that window, and that will occasionally move you. And so that's also, I think, something else that can work if somebody doesn't have the space for a month. But putting yourself near a window, it's a good thing.
But also be careful with the second monitor. I have a second monitor and I had to adjust because when I first started using it, I had horrible back pain. And I couldn't figure out what was causing it. And then, so I'm changing it. It turned out I had to move my keyboard out, and I had to move a bunch of stuff and kind of finagle it so it would work. I haven't had any problems with it in months, but boy, when I did it was awful. And I thought, oh, great, I'm so glad I got on the monitor.
You want them to be the same, at the same height. Don't want one monitor lower than another. Like that's now you say that, like once I figured that out, like I just need to stack a couple books, right? Like
yeah, and I think the other thing that points to is the fact that you have to kind of reevaluate this stuff. Just because something works for you for a while doesn't mean it's going to continue to work for you. So you have to sort of like think about and be intentional about rethinking these things. That's why it's good to check in with yourself, right? Because something will feel good for a while and then it won't feel good anymore. So just because you have a good setup at one point doesn't mean you don't have to ever think about it again. You still have to rethink. And then finally, when you're working, does anything hurt or feel uncomfortable? And what can you do to remediate that? So again, if you're getting up after writing it and you don't feel good in your body, then probably something needs to change. So think about that. Think about what you can change. Okay. Oh geez, mental health. We're going to do this very quickly. So mental health challenges of writers and solutions. Obviously, writers traditionally struggle with loneliness and isolation, right? Because writing is, for most people, not all people, but writing for most people is a solitary endeavor. Alcohol and drug abuse. To a great extent, this is overplayed in the media, right? And in media representations of writers, but, right? Imposter syndrome. A lot of writers deal with imposter syndrome. I'm not really a writer. I'm not good enough. Even people who have published many books and have had great acclaim talk about the fact that they still have imposter syndrome. So that's something that happens to a lot of people. Writer's block, anxiety, and procrastination, right? All of these are sort of mental health challenges, which is common. So what can we do about that? Again, these are sort of obvious things, but it's nice to look at them as a nice long list that we can kind of pick and choose from. So create supportive, understanding community with other writers and also non-writers, right? Because just hanging around with writers is going to drive you crazy too. You need to hang around some non-writers as well. So people who understand and people who don't understand or care are good. A little bit of balance there. Develop a reasonable schedule around your natural energy peaks and valleys. Like, I'm never going to do morning pages. Come on. Like, I'm not going to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and write for 20. Come on. Like, it's not happening. Ever. So think about when you naturally have energy. Think about when you naturally feel good and try to kind of create a schedule around those peaks and valleys. Keep healthy, thoughtful boundaries. Kristin, what kind of boundaries are you talking about? I mean, all kinds of boundaries. Keep boundaries around your time and your schedule, right? So don't write for too long to the exclusion of other things, but also don't let other things kind of invade your writing space or your writing time. Put boundaries around the kinds of feedback that you get. So put boundaries around rejection letters. Put boundaries around reviews. Put boundaries around feedback from whoever likes to give you feedback, right? It's okay to say to somebody in a writing group or to say to your spouse or whatever, I just want you to read this and appreciate it. I just want you to read this and tell me something good, right? Or I just need you to read this and tell me one thing that's not working. I can't hear 5, right? Healthy boundaries, and it's okay. Take brain breaks. In other words, get up and do something that crosses hemispheres. So like this thing, right? Or
You cross, touch your nose.
you start with your ears, then you do your nose and your ear, yeah. Or the one where you wink with, I can't do this. You wink with one eye and you snap with the other hand. And then you alternate. It's hard.
Easier when you do your thumb and pinky and then switch your thumb.
Yeah. And if you want to be like
That's
really,
good for your hand.
if you want to be really boring, just like this thing, like opposite knee to opposite elbow, like that's also fine. But anything that where you're crossing the center of the body. Check in with yourself. How you doing? How you feeling? Mentally, how you feeling? Physically, how you feeling? Practice expressive and reflective writing. So that expressive writing that we were doing before, that we were thinking about before, make that part of your writing practice. So if you know that you're going to work on your novel for 3 hours, take 5 minutes of that 3 hours and do some expressive writing. At the beginning, at the end, in the middle, wherever you need it, right? But do a little bit of expressive writing. Seek inspiration in the world. Go to museums, take a walk, look around you, have conversations, be fulfilled in all ways in your life, because the seeking of inspiration is going to just help your life, ultimately. Seek accountability. Look for people who can hold you accountable. Look for people who are going to say, did you write today? Did you write this week? Have you ever written anything in your entire life? My daughter, even now at 6, she'll be like, Mom, you haven't written in a long time. She writes all the time. She draws all the time. I'm a slack. She lets me know that. It's great account. Secure your work. Friends, secure your work. I hadn't thought about this, but think about it. How much time do we spend worrying about losing stuff? I spend a lot of time worrying about losing stuff. Find a way to secure your work. Make sure that you don't worry about that. Let that not be an issue. Has anybody seen the film Patterson? So good. If you haven't seen it, see it. It's so good. And writers, it's painful. It's painful in that way that reading Little Women is painful. When Amy throws Joe's manuscript into the fire, it's painful like that. Secure your work. It'll make you feel more secure in general. And then finally, treat your mental health issues. You're not Hemingway. You don't need to be Hemingway. Treat your mental health issues. You're not Fitzgerald. Treat your, I'll just go down the list of modernists. Okay. All right. So finally, and this is something that you can look at because we're done. We're just about done. This is something you can look at if you want to look at the slides, but give yourself a plan. So basically, what aspects of writing in your life need addressing immediately? Pick 1 or 2 things and then figure out a plan to fix those things. And then think more long-term. What 1 or 2 things can you change long-term? But give yourself a plan, check in, be accountable with yourself about that plan. Because you can't write if you're not healthy. You won't write if you're not healthy. And you definitely won't write well if you're not healthy. Okay, we don't have a lot of time. Because I talk too much, but reach out, email me. I'm there, always, all the time. I never get away. But this is a conversation that we can continue to have. Or if you just need somebody to give you a little bit of accountability, or you need somebody to just give you a little bit of affirmation, right? That's good for your mental health too. Feel free to reach out. It's just kdorsey@cscc.edu. Again, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I just want to say, for myself, I can't speak for anyone else, but none of that was recent.
Oh, thank you.
So many nuggets.
Sometimes we just need to think about ourselves, right? And it's my friend, I have a really close friend, and she always used to talk about how she wished she didn't have a body. She just wished she was a floating head. Right? And I think writers often feel like they're floating heads. And I think it's really important for us to remember we are people in bodies. And, you know, I don't do a good job of this. And this is as much of a reminder to me as it is to anybody else, that we're in bodies and we need to think of ourselves as in bodies. Thank you for coming. I appreciate
All
it.
right. Thank you very much. That was very, very useful. Yeah. So those of us who are still here, there's snacks and coffee and stuff to eat and drink over there. Again, if you're interested in tutoring, Jennifer Forbes ran the writing center at COCC for many years. If you have questions about how it works, she'll please stick around for me. And if you want me to connect you with Bennett, let me know and I'll get you connected to him. Chat with Kayla if you're interested in the writing group. Take a look at the books back there. Talk, enjoy, be community, and thanks for coming. All right. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, good to see you.
No, at all.